MarTechTalk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of MarTechTalk. I'm your host Luke, and today we'll be joined by two fantastic panelists. And you're more than welcome to join in as well. You can get involved using the chat box to the side. Please feel free to ask questions as they come up. But before I introduce our panelists, let's set the scene for what we're discussing. This week's topic is the role of the MarTech leader. So we're going to start off by talking about the MarTech strategy leader. Who are they, and more specifically, what skills do they need? Then we'll discuss how MarTech leaders' roles evolve as more tools are deployed and developed. And then finally, we'll move on to look at getting ROI out of your MarTech. So get you quick wins and to manage expectations. So let's begin. Let's begin by welcoming our lovely guests this week. In no particular order, can I ask you to turn on your cameras and mics when I introduce you, please? Elias, who is the head of growth marketing at business insurance firm Superscript. Hello, Elias. Oh, we've got you there. Hi, Elias. And gone. Okay, maybe Elias having some issues. I'm going to move on and introduce.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are. Hi, Elias. Thanks for coming on. And
Hello.
We've also got Pratyush, head of marketing at digital venture builder Blenheim Chalcott. Hi, Pratyush. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Luke. Thanks for having me. Hi, Elias.
Okay, I think he's working. Let's just dive into our news. Get started. Okay, so we've got an article here which comes from LXA, and it's entitled "The Top Emerging MarTech Roles in 2023." One interesting figure that jumped out was that 91.2% of marketing operations members train and support marketing staff on using marketing tech products. Another one that jumped out was it goes on to say that 50% take responsibility for data privacy and compliance, and 61% perform technical reviews of MarTech, plus 54% pay for MarTech products out of their own budgets. And that's only a few of the figures from this story. So it's pretty clear the MarTech leader's role is, well, busy, to say the least. So what are your thoughts on this, guys? Pratyush, can I come to you first, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
I completely agree. Like 91% sounds like very realistic, and yeah. But I believe the number actually might be more. Like yeah. And yeah, that's it. So to be very honest, like to define like the a proper definition of a MarTech leader, I believe it's basically someone, an executive who defines like strategy and technology goals, which basically helps achieve the marketing objectives. So yeah, in very simple, that's my definition, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, because that story that the top emerging MarTech roles of 2023 was the headline there. It's interesting because it's emerging roles, and it obviously it's changing as technology changes, but it makes it sound like there's more work than ever to be a MarTech leader.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. The MarTech leader is like often compared now it's compared to someone being between the CMO and the CTO, someone who basically sort of like speaks the same language that the CTO speaks, as well as understands what traditional marketing disciplines are all about. And yeah, that's why this is something new. It's evolving every single day. As every day there's some new tool being introduced. Now with Gen AI in the picture, there's always something new coming up, and yeah, the role is constantly evolving. It started off with just an expectation of automating these mundane tasks, like sending emails or these messages. But now it's grown to be so much more than that. Now it's about architecturing an entire ecosystem, which helps like to improve the customer experience and the customer journey. For businesses. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, constantly evolving. It must be an interesting place to be as a MarTech leader, because your role isn't clearly defined, and I suppose it's almost an exploration, isn't it? It's pioneering, I suppose.
Absolutely, it is partly pioneering, partly exploring. It's actually, like, it's trying to sort of like do whatever it takes to have the competitive advantage against the businesses a company is trying to compete with in the market that they're in. So, and it takes, and nothing is like a permanent solution every day. It's so dynamic every day. There's a new tool out there. There's a new technology out there which keeps changing the way customers respond to sort of these marketing campaigns. So yeah, it is very dynamic, and it's evolving as new tools and new technologies are coming in every single day.
Thanks, Rajesh. And Elias, looks like your connection's back with us now. So did you want to have your say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from my point of view, as this article is saying, is kind of showing and painting kind of the picture of how varying that role of a marketing leader is, and how much, how many hats you need to be wearing, by showing how many emerging MarTech roles are. I mean, if we had this conversation like 5 years ago, not more than that, some people would even say, do you even need like a MarTech leader? What does that role even mean? As Pratish was saying, it all started in most of the organizations on trying to sort out how to send their emails, how to have their database sent on a platform like Salesforce, which isn't the easiest actually to work with, and how they can actually send in a real time, trigger the emails to the right customers, and then it maybe evolved a little bit to SMSs. In some companies, it evolved to how we can get the sales team to get the leads as quickly as possible after marketing has introduced the leads to them. But now it has evolved to all this kind of huge monster, if I can call it this way, that is basically multifaceted from different platforms, from marketing point of view, from data architecture point of view, from customer data point of view. That is, I think, why this article is so relevant, kind of showing that now it's no longer one part of the business that needs to worry about MarTech. It's kind of everyone in tech, everyone in data cares about that, everyone in marketing cares about that, because the availability of the data, the flow from different systems to another, and also how quickly that happens, it really defines how successful you can be.
That efficiency of the movement of data, yeah. That's a good point. And it's also interesting because, as Pratish was saying before you there, that the role's constantly changing. And our first point is actually the MarTech strategy leader specifically, and what skills do they need? And this word strategy, I really want to pick that out, because it's hard to have a strategy when you don't really know what's coming. It's very difficult to plan. So yeah, Pratish, moving on to our first point, if you're ready to jump back in, who are the strategy leaders and what skills do they need at the moment?
So the strategy, it came from the CMOs usually, or the marketing directors. But now when the marketing technology leader has now, the role is now evolving beyond just creating these efficient and effective technology stacks, and now it's extending towards creating strategic value creation for an improved business performance. And this is just not true within the marketing department, but this also extends to sales and also to customer service. So this is why, since it's just not limited to marketing anymore, that's the reason why I think the word marketing strategy leader comes into sort of like formation. But yeah, I still think more or less it's pretty much the same, whether you call it a strategic leader or whether you call it a MarTech leader. It's pretty much the same. Yeah.
And I know yesterday you were sort of mentioning about how it's tech driven and data centric now.
Absolutely, the MarTech leader needs to be like a good MarTech leader first needs to have like the right technical literacy, and it's just not, and slightly more than just technical literacy. It's someone who needs to be driven by by these new. It should be technology driven and should be data driven, instead of just relying on the older ways of driving marketing strategies and goals. So yeah, it's partly that, and then data plays a very important role, because everything comes down to the data that a company has, and especially about the customers and about about the people, about the other stakeholders of the business. So this is why it's very important to understand and analyze the data in order to make better decisions. It's gotten like very important for marketing technology leaders to sort of understand the right ways to sort of like the right ways to actually make decisions using this data. So yeah, this is some of the things that a marketing technology leader needs in order to sort of like to contribute to the marketing success.
So you're sort of talking about innovation here and ways to, is it new ways to innovate with the same data, or are we talking about pulling in new data and innovating with that, or a bit of both?
A bit of both. Data is also changing constantly because the consumer is changing every day. So there's so there's a slight difference between just database and data. So database is about the list of people that you have as your buyers or as your prospects. But data is actually, who are these guys and what do they do and what do they prefer and where are they located, and where can companies actually meet them and interact with them. So this data keeps changing every day. So this is why it's very, and also since this data is so dynamic, the decisions have to be so dynamic as well. Decisions have to be taken real time in order to actually make any difference. By the time you take a decision on a data that's probably like 3 months old, you might not be sort of like making the most out of your marketing efforts. So yeah, it's a bit of both. When I say innovation, it's the innovation is actually using this data, companies can go back and actually innovate their product and services. They can come back with something that's a better product market, so something that fits the market in a slightly better way. So studying like product market fits, and conducting a lot of cohort analysis to understand exactly what is it exactly that the customer needs today. This is what helps businesses to sort of go back and innovate. So yeah, this is how we link it to the to the MarTech role. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And what about yourself, Elias? How have you seen the role change now as the MarTech strategy leader has evolved?
Yeah, I think also kind of this role in my mind has been split now into more people, at least in the organizations I work. It is no longer so much just a marketing role. I see that sometimes, this hat is split between also like chief data officers as well, or similar to chief technology officers as well, like CTOs, or different other kind of ways of splitting kind of the responsibility because of this kind of multifaceted way that it's working. And from marketing point of view, obviously, we as marketers are driving it because these other teams, they're more enablers, so we can make it happen. but we do need also their understanding and their buy-in as well, because we're talking about sometimes architectural changes on how data is flowing, or how we can build real-time pipes, as Pratish is saying, so we can get the data as quickly as possible to, let's say, an advertising platform or to a nurturing platform. If you consider also like a use of AI, which sometimes now it can happen on the fly. There's some predictive models, for example, that we use in this company and previous companies, where we predict the value of a customer. That is helping us prioritize, if, for example, who we retarget to. So let's say someone is coming to the website, they answer a few questions, but they don't purchase. We have a prediction score which is saying how likely they are to convert. And this way we decide whether this customer, and we need to nurture them through a free channel like CRM, or whether we should nurture them through sales because we believe they can be high value customer, or both, or whether we should even actually connect it to our advertising platform so we can actually retarget them because they've left the site already. So we need to get them back to the conversation, especially if we don't have any unique identifier for them or unique contactable way. So all these, they only matter, especially if you know that someone is in market, they only matter if you action them quickly, as Pratish was saying. If you don't action them when they're hot, when they're kind of a hot lead, and you action them, I don't know, as in the past we're doing 24-hour uploads, for example, it might be too late. In the insurance world that I am, people are normally buying in a matter of days and deciding the next, and they will check a few providers and then they will purchase. If you don't reach them at the right time, you have another window next year again. So it does really matter how quickly you can action, how quickly you can evolve those pipelines, so you can get them at the right time, at the right point, with the right format as well. And as I said before, how you also use the data you collect, but you also use the data you calculate, like these predictions, how you use them maybe to personalize the journey on the website based on previous experiences they had with you. All these are giving you kind of unique edge. So as a leader, you always try to find these extra kind of solutions. You can say, I already have this, or how you use even third-party solutions. So for example, given our work at B2B, we have a lot of third-party data that we also get from databases, and we enhance the view. So we don't ask people to have to fill all the information, because we ask them, what's the name of your company? They say, let's say, Look AdWords Limited, and then we can say, oh, you're a journalist, or because we know that from a database, or we can say, we know that from Companies House, your turnover is 100,000 last year, so we don't even need to fill this information. So you even make your journey, faster and quicker. So it's a combination of, how you kind of accelerate this way, third-party data that you have at your disposal, how you use your first-party data you collected from previous journeys, and how you create those kind of oomph moments for people to kind of be excited to want to work with you because it's seamless, it's simpler to work with you. So this is, I think, how a marketing leader is kind of making the journey better for the customer, but also, I guess, helping the company achieve its goals as much as possible.
Yeah, a lot of sort of pressure on time turnarounds there, I'm hearing, and those pipelines. I imagine the more pipelines you got in the more departments, the more potential slowdowns, right? So that must be difficult to kind of make sure everything's coming together and everyone is invested in their departments to get that to you. Because I suppose if you're reliant on three pipes and you're only getting two, or they're out of sync in terms of time, it sounds like a lot to juggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to be fair, sales team also like, hot leads. So they are the first time to jump on a good opportunity. So they want, they want you to feed through the pipe, like good opportunities, good leads to come to them. But equally, there will be times, and we had this before, where it's like, we send too many of them and they cannot handle it. So we even need to understand, their availability sometimes on how much they can handle, or at least to help them prioritize based on what we know. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes, if the pipe is wide enough and you're bringing too many people, it might be kind of counterintuitive as well. I remember in a previous company where people were able to book an appointment to speak, like with an advisor, and then if you end up not having appointments available quickly, you were just paying for a lead that didn't have any value to you. So it becomes a little bit like a two-sided market, that if you can't control like the supply and the demand in a sense.
Yeah, even more difficult. Yeah, you've got to control the flow speed as well.
Yeah,
well, that's
absolutely.
We've got a question here from Rose, and I don't know if it ties into this specifically, but She asks, thank you for the question, Rose. She asks, what are the biggest challenges you're facing as a MarTech leader? I mean, that sounds like a big challenge right there, Elias. But so I don't know if you've got more to add to that.
I can mention a few challenges.
Okay.
I think I think the biggest challenge that you normally you're facing first and foremost is kind of trying to justify why you need one more kind of MarTech product. As I mentioned in other times, in the past, there were a lot of companies that were selling you the fact that you can just buy one and will solve all your problems. But we are now at an era that basically not all the things can be solved with our product, no matter how good that product they're trying to sell you that it is. There's always other products that you needed to complement with. We moved to this kind of more composable kind of way of structuring the customer data platforms. The same for a little bit less, but the same also for CRM and for other, especially with the MarTech advertising platforms. You might need sometimes even one per advertising platform that is solving a specific thing. So I would say the biggest challenge that I faced normally is convincing why we need one more cost and why the previous one that we actually researched for so long, and as Pratyush was saying, at the time it was the right decision, why no longer it's fitting your bill and why you need to justify, to your CFO another expense, and how you try to convince that you're actually adding extra value whilst you already had, your set budget for the year and so on. And I guess this all has to do with, as Pratyush was saying, is that it's always evolving in terms of environment. So every single day is different. And to be fair, every year is getting harder to actually achieve your goals because there's the duopoly of Facebook and Google, for example. They're working less and less together. There's the same with other advertising platforms that they can, like Amazon, for example, is diverging a bit more than they used to in the past. So you have a lot more challenges from the platforms themselves that they don't work with each other. So you need to create different solutions for different use cases. So yeah, I would say this complexity plus trying to sell another new platform to solve another use case. I think that's the biggest challenge that I'm facing on a more regular occurrence.
Okay, thanks, Elias. And before you panic, Rose, we've got our last point we're going to be talking about is getting ROI out of your MarTech. So we may have some solutions to those problems. But Pratyush, what about you? Have you got any big challenges you're facing at the moment?
Oh, actually, I'm in complete agreement with Elias. And just to add, maybe one of the challenges that I personally face as a marketing technology professional is that there's this requires us to sort of learn so many things every single day. It's like a never-ending education. Every single day there's something new to understand and new to learn. And there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of sales information out there, which basically which makes it much harder than anyone can imagine. And also, another thing is that this is usually more complicated than what people think it is. So sometimes the timelines that's required to sort of implement something or to deploy a product or to even get it adopted amongst the stakeholders of the business is something that may seem slightly longer than than what someone would basically try to sort of estimate using common sense or logic. So that's why it's very hard to convince the CEOs and the other business leaders about the timelines of deploying these tools. But besides these two things, it's a very expensive line of work, and it's completely expense oriented. So this every day, and as Elias rightly said, that there's not one tool which can solve all the problems. Every day there's something new coming up. Every day there's a new way of marketing that's trending. So every time something new comes up, it requires the business to sort of invest in another tool and then another tool. Few years ago, until 2019, Gartner said that Gartner basically it came out with a report that said that marketing leaders were not using the potential of these the stacks that they were investing in, and they said that over 60% of them did not invest in it. Over 60% of the potential was not explored. And now, even though that percentage is increasing, but we still feel that there's a lot of there's a real long way to go. Like it might take us maybe another 5 years to actually have to actually be able to completely utilize what we're investing in. So to get everybody to use these tools, to get the whole team to adopt it properly, adoption is not a big challenge nowadays anymore, but to actually use it in the right way, to use these technologies in the right way, and to sort of like deliver that advantage that basically we promise our business leaders before we actually ask them to sign off for these expensive tools. That's a very big challenge. That's like something that I hope in time it gets better for everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, reading between the lines there, it sounds like it's the actual relationship between the MarTech leader and the CEO, the CTO, and that there needs to be a lot of trust there to kind of
100%.
trust that what you're going for is going to be a good bet, I suppose. But yeah, we'll move on to the next point, because it's about how MarTech leaders' roles evolve, and more trust is probably a part of that, but also more tools. You both mentioned that, more tools, and how are these tools developed? How are they deployed? How do you pick them? All these sorts of points. Pratish, I'll give you a break because you've been talking for a while there, and we'll move on to Elias, if that's okay with you, and let you tackle this next point, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say that whenever you're having a sales call about a new MarTech tool, they will always tell you how easy and seamless it is to kind of implement a new tool and onboard people, and of course that's their job to do. But in reality, it does take a lot of steps, and a lot of the platforms, no matter how simple they claim to be, it might take weeks or even months sometimes to get to the full potential. That might mean that sometimes you lose confidence from some people within the company, or you lose also what Pratish was saying, actually interest to actually fully use those platforms, because they're feeling you're spinning your wheels and you're not getting exactly what you were promised to do. I think it's very important to have like a very pragmatic timeline whenever you're onboarding a new tool, and to have like some very specific use cases that you want to achieve straight away, rather than try to achieve all of them. I normally recommend that you try to achieve a few that are the most important ones. So you prioritize the use cases rather than go, I'm going to do everything, and then actually you're not delivering any of them because it takes so long to actually get them to happen. So kind of small baby steps that are unlocking each of them a specific value. I think that helps to also build the trust and build also the excitement from other people, because they can say, okay, this is working. Let's maybe invest some more time to make the next one to work. Or let's invest some more time from data to actually, create this connection so we can do the use case too, because we've shown already the use case one was a success. But yeah, I've seen so many times that, people are trying to solve all the issues straight away, and that is it's counterintuitive, really. If I connect it to what you said before about measuring the ROI of the platform, I think that is also helping from that point of view. If you're able to have a complete use case, and you're able to even maybe sometimes experiment with how you're currently doing it versus how you're doing it with the new platform, that is also maybe a way of measuring the ROI. Like from an opportunity cost sometimes, or from an actual improvement because of the change that you've introduced to the platform, or because of the change you did to how quickly the data are flowing and so on. You can even sometimes A/B experiment or before and after. So that's another way that you also can measure kind of the impact, and you start proving the value to the business. And as I said, like most importantly, you're building the trust to the business that, the reason you're doing and you're implementing a new platform, there's a reason that you already start proving it. And you can always say, this is just the beginning, I'm already doing this, but the pipeline, I already have these other 4 use cases that in the next quarter, so I'm going to try to solve. But yeah, in general, small steps, try to make them happen, try even if possible to experiment and show before and after value. And the more you're able to connect it with like revenue to the business or profit to the business, the easier you can justify why you're doing this expense, and the better confidence you have for the future to scale, do whatever you need to do, or the buy-in to get from other departments to get to what you said, like this ubiquity of all these pipelines moving from different places and combined at the right time at the right place.
Yeah, the focusing on the single one and making that work it sounds like a very stable and balanced way to do it. But I wonder if you've got a new CDP and you're trying to make it work, is how long do you stay on that single track before you think, okay, I'm gonna have to try something new, or are you there trying to hit a certain number or a certain time, or is it something you just get a feel for, or is it different on each use case, or how does that work?
I think it is a little bit different from every use case, but on the example of a CDP that you mentioned, for example, I normally assign the biggest value to a CDP on how well you can decide your audience that you want to target and then flow it to the different platforms, because that's the core of every CDP, right? Being able to select the audience you want to make an action and then see how well you can target it on a platform, either being a CRM platform, an advertising platform. So that's normally like the use case I would start, which is normally the biggest percentage. It might be unlocking like 60 or 70% of the value. And of course, there will be CDPs that also do other stuff. Like, I used to work with Blueconic, for example, that was always also doing overlays like pop-ups and things like that. If you start with this, I think you're kind of missing a trick, because it might be easier to implement the pop-up. But is that the reason you actually had a CDP so you can do a pop-up? You could have done this, with this developer doing it for you. So that's why I was saying, like, if you can focus on the main value driver, this is actually then much, much better to actually prove why you're doing it. And if you think that this modular way I mentioned before, I think that's also quite important to understand. Okay, I've done this step, and that is now maybe feeding data, and that is actually making a lot better decision for advertising. So then I can measure the impact on advertising. That also makes a lot better, maybe personalized emails now, because I have segmented my audience in a much better way, in a more real-time way. So my emails are flown at a better rate, and now I have better open rates, or I have better closure rates with our sales team. So kind of trying to connect with the outcomes, I think that's the most important thing. And still, I still stand with this, like, try to limit the scope as much as possible and not try to do all things together.
Nice, yeah, keeping focused. And what about yourself, Pratyush? How do you see the MarTech leader's role evolving in terms of tools and deployment and development?
It's the way these new technologies are coming in, especially I would say, like, with now the introduction of Gen AI tools, like everything, like from ChatGPT to Bard, and I don't know how, the numerous products which use these tools. I think one of the things that marketing technology leaders are focusing, or maybe they're sort of like working on is trying to make the best use cases out of these tools. So I think that's what we see right now as evolving, like to sort of find the best use cases for these new tools, and then decide whether if as Elias rightly said, that if it justifies the cost, if it justifies the ROI. So we don't go we don't end up buying a machine gun to kill a fly, like as many companies have ended up buying, like for paying for like CDPs just to do very small things. So I think the deployment is very important, the use case, and we see this thing getting easier by the day as new tools are coming in. It's very easy to sort of integrate tools. Earlier, back in the day, things were very difficult. Everything had to be sort of created using a webhook or an API. But now we have many amazing innovations out there, which basically immediately connects to tools without any use of any code or any use of a programmer. So things are getting easier, things are getting better. But as Elias rightly said, that eventually it all comes down to driving revenue and improving and increasing the customer lifetime value. So this is where it all connects to your previous question about ROI. So there's no one particular method to actually calculate an ROI, but if you keep it very simple, if marketers like and also, as I mentioned earlier about the CEOs, and I wasn't really talking about from my own personal experience. I was just saying that generally it's universal. It's a universal experience all marketing professionals face, that as these things are so expensive, it all comes down to what exactly drives revenue, and there's a lot of trial and error needs to be done. So anything that drives revenue improves customer lifetime value, lowers customer acquisition costs, creates like a positive customer experience, contributes to engagement. All of these things are things that basically is like a part of a MarTech leader's role now. And as times are evolving, it's going to get it's going to grow from just being just setting up these ecosystems, and it's going to grow from making the most out of these ecosystems and these architectures that these MarTech leaders are creating now. So yeah.
And I think you mentioned before about how you kind of need to be 4 different roles. I forget the exact roles you said.
Actually, it has to be like the MarTech leader has to be everything now. He has to have the he or she should have a proper traditional marketing understanding. So like a traditional marketer who hasn't worked on any online or digital marketing, someone who understands, someone who's basically was categorized as a brand marketer before. So the MarTech leader needs to be a brand marketer, as well as a content creator, as well as someone who knows digital marketing very well. But besides this, also understands exactly where marketing and communication plays a role to sort of like drive sales. So it's many hats. And then besides all of this, it's as Elias rightly said, it's someone who's like a chief information officer or a chief technology officer. Ultimately, we are expected to be all of these, in different circumstances and different situations. This is now what basically makes a marketing technology leader today.
I suppose to spot the tool that you want to make the investment in requires you to see how it's going to work across all those channels, and I suppose to see how it's not going to work as well.
Absolutely. So because, as I said, there's a lot of trial and error that goes in. No one can actually know without trying whether which tool works for which business model. So a tool that works. So there's a lot of myth out there. So a lot of business leaders, they just think that and especially the ones who've actually burned their hands in previous investments, they think that that let's just go for Salesforce. Even though whether Salesforce might be the right product for them, or might be the right tool to sort of like select for for the use case they have. Now that's basically that's something that no one can know until they try it out. But as we see that there's a lot of fear in the market, there's a lot of fear amongst senior business leaders, is because they a lot of people feel that because they've already burned their hands in using these tools in the past, which hasn't worked, they feel that let's just go for the most expensive one that's out there, so it'll do the job, even though the market that they might be catering to might not be as big as might not require the business to use a tool like Salesforce. Even though Salesforce, I would say by far, is one of the best business products, best marketing products. It makes the best tools out there for sure. But it might not be the best product for all use cases. So that's why it takes a lot of experimenting and a lot of trial and error, a lot of exploration. As you had mentioned earlier, since this job requires this work requires a lot of exploration. Yes, this is what it is. Until you don't know what doesn't work, you can't actually strike it off your list. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm going to come back to ROI, because we've all danced around ROI a bit. So let's move on to that now. Getting the most out of ROI. So getting the most out of your MarTech with quick wins and with sort of managing expectations. Again, we've touched on that, haven't we, with the CEOs and the CTOs. But How have your experiences been with that, Elias? And I'm aware we're 5-10 minutes out, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so the ROI, as I said before, is one of the hardest things to actually measure in MarTech. If you remember what I said in the beginning, is given that the things are changing all the time, and the tool that you buy now, based on a specific pricing, might not actually fit the bill a year later. Proving the ROI is a little bit of a bet sometimes. So you're trying your best, as I said before, to actually have the use cases, prove the value, and unlock more value, I guess, with future use cases. And it's all about measuring it against what historically has been done, I would say, or measuring what you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It's kind of a little bit of, from one side, the opportunity cost I mentioned before, plus maybe the incremental capabilities that you're building, and trying to measure versus either historical data or actual like A/B experiments. This is what normally is the most concrete way of being able to measure the impact. If we think of what I mentioned, like the personalization example, it might be an easy example to say, okay, 50% of the users are going to get a personalized email in real time, when 50% are going to get a generic email that they're getting at the moment. So that's easy to actually then measure and say, the 50% of the users that got personalized maybe got an X% uplift. And here you got the revenue versus kind of the cost that you spend for that tool. That is a simple way. But if you go to other things, that is, let's say, about lifetime value, you might need months to actually measure the impact and understand whether you actually drove customers with higher lifetime value versus the previous one. But yeah, you do try to measure what you can, and as before, try to measure something that, if possible, is not too far down the line. At least you get some evidence that this thing that you promised to the business works, so you're able to then justify either future internal investment or future monetary investment. Because I think it's pretty important to mention that a lot of the times the investment is not always just the money, but the investment from, I don't know, a tech team to onboard like the tool, or the product team to actually start using it, or the marketing team training, and lost time to maybe other stuff they could have been doing. So it's this investment that is actually sometimes even more expensive potentially than just the, I don't know, £1,000 a month that you're paying for the marketing tool.
And I'm looking at the points, quick wins and managing expectations, and I'm thinking, what is quick? That must vary from product to product, from test to test, and sort of selling that in at the start must be difficult when you don't really know how long it's going to take and the expectations aren't set. So, how do you get that figure of, how do you manage expectations in terms of time?
Yeah, normally I would say it's like more quarterly projects, these kind of projects. Okay. Normally with MarTech, they're not stuff that are immediate, like you can say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be able to improve our sales by 10%. But, you create like a quarterly kind of agenda, and you're saying these are the stuff I prioritize to do first, and have an understanding of how many customers potentially are affected based on the current run rate. You try to put maybe a forecast of it, like, so let's say 10% uplift by doing this, and then you have like a good estimate on what it will do. But yeah, it's not so immediate as, I guess, other interventions that you're doing.
Nice. Traditional quarters. Good. And what about yourself, Pratyush? How have your experiences fared?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Ilya said, but I honestly, my battle is my struggle is with actually trying to sort of implement and trying to sort of help businesses understand what's the right ROI formula to actually go for, because a lot of places I've seen that the calculation is not done correctly, and so there's nothing such as a quick win. It's even though what might be a quick win, it would be very hard to actually sort of to conclude and to understand basically what drove that quick win. But if you actually try to understand how well your tech stack has been performing, you at least need to give your tech stack 3 years, and this is like the most common period for calculating any gain. So that's where we go with time period, and time period is the most essential part of this whole calculation of ROI. But overall, it's just it is like a very good it's never going to be accurate. It's an estimate, and this estimate is the only way to validate our ROI is to test out the product, implement the product and revisit assumptions regularly over time. Measuring actual ROI will provide some good data to sort of leaders and managers, which will help them to project ROI for new products that are similar in structure or value or in nature. So there is, ROI is, and again, as I mentioned, there are like thousands of methods out there to calculate this. But again, I'll come back to my main thing, that which basically, as per the books and as per my own personal experience, the right way to do it is to understand what's basically driving revenue and what's also driving customer lifetime value, because these are the two most important things. Then it comes what's basically lowering customer acquisition costs. I see a lot of companies that I work with that they, within like a period of 3 or 6 months, they immediately get like high revenue using, programmatic ads, or maybe sometimes, like paid campaigns, PPCs and everything. And they immediately think that's what's right. And then, and that's what's basically driving the customer lifetime value as well, like the kind of strategies that they use. And then the next thing we see is that they try to immediately focus on lowering down the customer acquisition cost. So, but I think, this is, unfortunately, it can't be done so fast. There has to be a little bit of patience in the picture as well. So, ROI is one of the next things that we all need to figure out. So it is also going to be a part of the evolution and the, of this role and this whole space that we are all exploring as marketers.
Great, thank you, Rajesh. And I'm aware we've run out of time, so I'm gonna round up with our little yes or no question we always have at the end. And this week it is: should MarTech leaders have free access to IT department resources? So it kind of ties into our many conduits there. So yes or no, Rajesh?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and yes.
Have to say yes, right? I'm very biased though.
Thought that might be the answer. Good to hear. Well, thank you both for joining us. It's been good to have you on the show. And thanks to all our guests for coming on today. We will be back next week, Tuesday the 13th of June at 3 p.m. BST, when we'll be talking about leading your MarTech transformation. Until then, have a great week and goodbye for now.